attention, please. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I am son of Yisrael, Mishonia Hawkins, and I'm going to start serving you as a priest starting very soon. It's now time to start fighting your seats for Sabbath services. May I have your attention, please? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I am son of Yisrael, Yahweh Hawkins, and I want to start serving you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's a privilege and honor to present to you sons and daughters of Yisrael now entering the sanctuary. I'll turn over to son of Yisrael, Yediah Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. My name is son of Yisrael, Yediah Hawkins, and I would like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. The title of my speech is "Do Not Touch the Unclean Things, and I Will Receive You." Yahweh gave mankind 613 perfect laws to live by. One of those laws commands us not to eat or touch any unclean thing. Why? Because it can hurt you and me. For example, the pig, the catfish, the rabbit is unclean to you. The cow, the goat, the buffalo fish is clean to you. How do you know this? Yahweh says in Leviticus 11, we may eat any animal that has a split hoof, completely divided, and chews the cud. And whatever has fins and scales we may eat. In conclusion, Yahweh wants us to as his sons and daughters. Do not touch the unclean things, and I will receive you. May Yahweh bless your understanding. I will turn it over to the next speaker.
If all remain standing, it's my great honor and privilege to present to you the first speaker, the great Deacon Jacob Hawkins. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today, my title is Learning to be in 100% Unity Will Keep You in the House of Yahweh. Alright, learning to be in 100% unity will keep you in the house of Yahweh. Now, first let's turn to Acts. Let's turn to Acts. Acts 2, found on page 841. Page 841, that's Acts 2. And the first verse it says, this is talking about the Holy Spirit poured out. It says, now, when the day of Pentecost had fully come, they were with one accord, united in mind, in one place. Okay, notice the unity there. They were in unity, in one place, with one accord. Now let's also go to Matthew 16. Matthew 16, found on page 744. Matthew 16, found on page 744. And if you look at verse 18, Matthew 16:18, it says, and I also say to you who are Kepha, whose name means rock, that upon this rock, Yahweh unity, I will build this house, family, the house of Yahweh, and the gates of Sheol, the grave, will not prevail against it. Now, this is Yeshua talking here. If you look back up to verse 17, Yeshua answered and said to them, blessed are you, Simon, son of Yana, for flesh and blood only has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And then that's when he says that upon this rock, Yahweh unity, he will build this house, the house of Yahweh, and the gates of Sheol will not prevail against it. Now, this is the very first time that Yeshua showed you have to be in unity through him, through Yeshua, through the house of Yahweh as well. You have to be in unity through them. Okay? Now, what is the house of Yahweh? How do you know you're at the house of Yahweh? Let's go to Deuteronomy 12. Deuteronomy 12 verse 5, found on page 157. Deuteronomy 12 verse 5, it says, but you are to seek the habitation. Now that word seek, you have to seek it by study. You study about the house of Yahweh in the Book of Yahweh, and you'll see that it is established in Abelin, Texas. Okay, it says, but you are to seek the habitation of your father, the house of Yahweh, the place which Yahweh your father shall choose out of all your tribes to establish his name, and there you must go. Okay, that word established, it means supported by the government that it abides. Okay, now we are the only ones that have that name. You can see that if you look up the house of Yahweh in Google, if you type that right into Google, the first thing that pops up is the house of Yahweh in Abilene, Texas. Praise Yahweh. Okay, we are the only ones that have that name. Now, how can you be in unity? Well, one of the very first steps to being in unity is you have to go to the priest. Okay, go to the priest. If you go to Deuteronomy 17, found on page 161, Deuteronomy 17, you see the first step is to go to the priest. Let's look at verse 9. It says, go to the priest who are Levites, and to the judge who is in office at that time, ask for their decision, and they will give you the sentence of judgment. Let's look at verse 10. It says, you must act according to the sentence they pronounce for you at the place Yahweh chooses. Be careful to do all they order you to do. According to the law they teach you, you shall do. And according to the decisions they give you, notice the decisions, that's the counseling and the teaching they give you, you shall do. Okay, and if you look at that side note there, G9, it says you shall obey their sentence. so that the controversy may be ended. Okay? It says, you must not turn aside to the right hand nor to the left from the sentence they pronounce for you. Okay, so that first step to being in unity is to go to the priest. And you have to do what they tell you to do. Then you will be in unity with the house of Yahweh. Okay, you can look at it as pastor on the top. Okay, then under that is the priest. Now those priests are getting their authority from pastor and their decisions from pastor. So if you're in unity with those priests, then you'll be in unity with the whole house of Yahweh. Okay, now, praise Yahweh. Let's look at 1 Kepha. 1 Kepha. 1 Kepha found on page 959. 1 Kepha 3, verse 8. Okay, it's 1 Kepha 3:8 found on page 959. It says, finally, this is talking about unity and righteousness. Finally, all of you be of one mind. Okay, notice that right there. Be of one mind. Okay, that doesn't mean arguing. That doesn't mean going against someone. That's being of one mind. That's unity. Having compassion for one another, full of brotherly love, sympathetic and courteous. It says, not repaying evil for evil, that's retaliation, nor reviling with reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you are called to this, so you may inherit the blessing. Okay, so prove that you can submit, okay, and not go Satan's way with retaliation. Prove that you can submit and be in unity. Okay, now you can't do what you think is right in your own eyes. You have to go through the priest. Okay, let's look at Deuteronomy again. Deuteronomy 12. Deuteronomy 12. Found on page 157. And look at verse 8. It says, you must not at all do as we are doing here this day, every man doing what is right in his own eyes. Okay, this is saying don't follow your own culture. Go to the priest and do what they tell you to do. Okay, but you have to make that choice. You have to make the choice in your own mind to be in unity. Let's go to Deuteronomy 30. Deuteronomy 30 found on page 173. Deuteronomy 30 verse 19. It says, I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you this day, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Therefore choose life, so both you and your children may live. So you have that choice. You can choose life, and if that's your choice to be in unity, then Yahweh offers protection to his house. Okay, he offers his house protection, and if you are in unity with the house of Yahweh, then you will be protected by Yahweh. Now, may Yahweh bless your understanding. If y'all please stand. I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker, the great Khan Benjamin Krause Hawkins.
Woo! Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. Are you loving this cool weather? All right. Well, like they say, if you can't stand the heat, get into it and get used to it. Praise Yahweh. I'd like to start off today with, let's turn over to 1 Kings 7:22, since today is 7:22. Let's go to 1 Kings 7:22, kind of pick up where we left off last time. If you remember, we read 15. This was regarding the two pillars that were cast by King Solomon, that were placed at the south porch of the house of Yahweh. It says he cast two pillars, each 18 cubits high and 12 cubits above, or about 18 feet around, measured by line. And then on verse 21 we read, then he set up the pillars on the porch of the house of Yahweh. He set up one pillar on the south side and called its name Yakin, which means he will establish. And he set up the other pillar on the north side and called its name Boaz. In him is strength. And remember, Yahweh has established this great house through his witness Yisrael Hawkins. And Yahweh is Yisrael Hawkins' strength, okay? And Yahweh uses men just like Satan uses individuals to do her work, okay? So keep that in your mind. Look at verse 22. The capitals on top of the pillars were in the shape of lilies. And so the work on the pillars was finished. And I want you to remember, when you look at the word pillars, I want you to keep a couple words in your mind. Pillars are symbols of memorials. If you look all through Scripture, you'll find examples of pillars being set up as memorials. And remember what we talked about during the great, the hidden secrets of the two witnesses and Yahshua, our high priest, about remembrance and the remembrance of Yahweh. So these pillars represent remembrance and memorials. But they also represent, do you remember what Yahshua said about pillars? He who overcomes, I will make a pillar in the house of my Father, and he will never go out from it. I believe that's Revelation chapter 2. I just want to put that thought in your mind. When you think about Yahshua Messiah and you think about the branch, Yisrael Hawkins, okay? Think about those pillars. Okay, now, another thing I want to get in there is about another number I want to throw at you. I know you're like, oh no, here we go again, more numbers. Well, I'll try to take it easy on you today, okay? I'll try to slow it down a little bit. And I think we have a new overhead that might work. I don't know how it works, but hopefully there it is. I want to give you this number right here. It's 2093. Can you all see that okay? Okay. 2093. And I want to talk about that for a minute, because I want to talk about how this work. Do you remember the sermon that was given by the great son of Israel, Abel, regarding John Wycliffe, and how he got the ball to rolling, okay, in these last days, or in the restoration of the Book of Yahweh, which occurred in these last days. Well, if you turn over to Isaiah 34, real quick, Isaiah 34. I'm going to read a scripture here, set it up. Isaiah 34:16. And it says, search out the Book of Yahweh and read, not one of these will be neglected. For it is written, Yahweh is their shepherd, they shall not want. For his mouth has commanded it, and his spirit has gathered them. Okay? Yahweh has shepherded over the Book of Yahweh. He's watched over this book, guarded every single letter. Let me tell you how this works. Remember what Pastor said about numbers in the Scripture, and how if one verse was out of place or misnumbered, or you added to or subtracted from anything in the Book of Yahweh, what would take place? I mean, even the page numbers are inspired, as you've been seeing in all these presentations, because the page numbers also match what's being brought forth. So if one thing was altered and not watched after by the great shepherd, would we get what we have now? No, we wouldn't. So it's not missing anything. There's nothing missing. Don't fall for the tricks of the Catholic Church that say, well, there's other books that should have been put in there. That's a lie from Satan. If it was necessary, it would be put in the Book of Yahweh. Yahweh would have inspired it to be put there for you to look at. Okay? And quite frankly, I've read some of those books. I've read the Book of Enoch that they put out. And all it did is promote a bunch of magic and witchcraft. Actually promoted Yahshua pre-existed. It promoted that Noah was some kind of magician. Okay? It's all just a bunch of Christianity. There's nothing to it. You're not missing anything. There's nothing missing from this book right here. This is perfect. So that number 2093, Isaiah 34:16, was actually written in 713 BY. Wycliffe began his work in 1380 AY, after Yahshua. That's exactly 2,092 years later. Or 2,092 years later, that's correct. This 2093, let's see if I can, okay, you can see that, okay? It means, you can see it, but I can't. It means readily. The state of being prepared. And it's from this word here, this Greek word, which is 2092. And it means ready, prepared. Ready, prepared. Ready because prepared, standing by, ready to meet the opportunity at hand because the necessary preparations are done or are sure to occur as needed. It means to accomplished, opportune, and ready. And it's talking about things being made ready in advance for the opportune, seasonable time. And it means on the point of being revealed. And it means ready and prepared, readiness and at hand. And if I can, let's look at first, I believe it's 1 Kepha 1:5. Let's turn over there. 1 Kepha 1:5. Yes. 1 Kepha 1:5, found on page 957. And I'm gonna go ahead and read verse 3 through 5. It says, "Blessed be Yahweh, the Father of our King, Yahshua Messiah, who according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again to a living hope through the resurrection of Yahshua Messiah from the dead, to an inheritance that's incorruptible and undefiled, in which does not fade away, reserved in the heavens for everyone here, that Yahweh's called in these last days." Verse 5, "Who are kept by the power of Yahweh through the faith for salvation ready to be revealed at the end time." Now this is the same word you just got done reading. Remember, it was kept and reserved and prepared for this time right now that we are living in today. Wycliffe got the ball rolling back in 1380 AY, and it was kept and it was preserved for this salvation that's being taught right here at the House of Yahweh on this Sabbath day. Every Sabbath day, salvation is taught here at the House of Yahweh. Yeah, it's okay to give Yahweh a hand. You know, Yahweh's in full control. And speaking of full control, you know, when you think of full control, what number do you think about? 512. All right, great. See, we're now it's sinking into our thick craniums. Some are thicker than others. I know mine's thicker than most of yours. But yeah, 512. When you think of 512, think that Yahweh's in full control. Yahweh reveals secrets. Only Yahweh can reveal the interpretation, as Daniel 5:12 says, and he can only do it through the last day's witness, Yisrael Hawkins. All I am, all any of us are just conduits, you know, working through, you have Yahweh, Yeshua's inspiring pastor's inspiring all of us through his writings, the teachings. Nothing comes forth that's outside of the teachings that are written in the House of Yahweh, okay? It's perfect. Everything that Yahweh's bringing forth, the workers that are doing this work, that are putting these calendars together, that are doing the work of Yahweh, are totally inspired by Yahweh. It's so amazing. And I always think to myself, well, who's greater? The one that labored at putting that thing together, or the one that had to bring forth the information that came from it? No one's greater than the other. We're all working together as a team, right, House of Yahweh? Okay. So speaking of 512, on 7/17, which was what, just a few days ago, 7/17. Anybody remember what 7/17 represents? Gathering. That's correct. But it also remember something else. It also represents memorial. Memorial of Yahweh. Let's turn over to Zechariah chapter 1 on 7/17. Page 7/17. About that remembrance of Yahweh. Yahweh, we always need to keep him on the forefront of our mind and everything that we're doing. You know, I know it's been rough on a lot of us, on all of us, because if you're in the house of Yahweh, whether you're the youngest child or you're the oldest man or woman, you're getting hit, okay? You're getting hit, but you know, Yahweh's love is greater than anything that Satan can throw at you. And Yahweh, if you'll just remember through all your tests and trials that you're going through, that Yahweh is in full control of this situation that I'm in right now. We've got to keep that in our head at all times. We can't give in to fear and emotions. We've got to remember that Yahweh's in full control, that He's going to see us through. Okay? He didn't call us to fail in the wilderness here. He called us, and remember, in the wilderness, they had trials, did they not? Scorpions, they called it. Well, the people around them that were testing them and trying to pull them into all kinds of foolishness and evil, you don't think we're going to go through the same thing? Yeah, and it's hot in this wilderness, isn't it? Yeah. You know why it's so hot? Because of sin. Sin. Sin is causing this misery that we're all suffering. But, I want you to remember there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a freight train coming at you. Okay? There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and Yahweh is there. He's waiting. He's going to see us through this thing, and He's not going to let us fail, House of Yahweh. Don't give in to fear at all. Okay, so on 7/17, on Drudge Report, there was an article, and it said, signals that appear to be coming from a star close to Earth may have been sent by aliens, scientists say. I'll show you a picture here in a minute, but I'm going to read you. I need to show you a number. And I'm going to get something out of here that don't need to be there. Here is when it was detected. Everybody can see that? May 12th at 1:53 a.m. Now, does anybody remember about 5:12 and the 153 fish you just heard about? Y'all remember that? Okay, great. So keep that in your mind. It says, it wasn't until 2 weeks after the project finished that they noticed the strange signals which came from Ross 128, some 11 light years away on 12th of May, 1:53 a.m. Now, what they're calling these signals are called radio bursts. Radio bursts. And they've actually been occurring since 2001. Okay? And scientists are baffled as to why they're taking place, but they're only baffled because they don't have Yahweh. Okay? We know what's causing them. I'm not going to get into that today. I just want to show you that Yahweh's in full control and that He's revealing things through these numbers. Okay? Now I want to show you a picture of, and let me set you up for this. I saw this picture actually about 5 years ago on Facebook when I was scrolling through my feed, and I thought it was fake because I thought, okay, somebody just made that picture to make it appear like a baby or something floating in a nebula. But then I found out just the other day on 7/17 when I read this article, I said, wait a minute, this is from NASA. This is the NASA picture. It's an actual picture. It's not fake. Nobody put it together, okay? And we don't work with NASA, okay? Even though a lot of things that NASA does is showing in these last days, proving us to be true. Here's a picture. Here's the picture. I don't know how well you can see that. But if you'll notice right around in here, you'll see a face very clearly. You see the nose right here and the lips. It's facing east. It's facing the east direction. It's right on the edge right here. Can you all see that? But there's a face right there that's plain as day. And it looks like a baby or something floating in that cloud. Okay, now, and I'll show it to anybody that would like to see it later. We'll make it available. Now, you're going to be amazed later on once Yahweh reveals everything that's going on regarding that picture and that number 512 and 153 or 153. Remember, Yahweh's in full control. Now, I want to show you something else. I want to tie up some loose ends here on the pastor's arrest. This is the This is the 10th Roman month in the House of Yahweh calendar, persecuted but not forsaken. Okay? And it says, I was in jail and you visited me. And it gives a couple of prophecies right here. Therefore I will dissolve the Levitical priesthood and will give Jacob to the curse and Israel the reproaches. Isaiah 43:28. And then, yes, and all who live righteously as Yeshua Messiah will suffer persecution. 1 Timothy 3:12. You know, when you run that through the gematria calculator, there's something that he wrote here on the calendar, okay? Pastor says, in these final days of Satan's war against the saints of Yahweh, Satan and her followers have worked relentlessly and desperately with schemes to try to wear out and destroy every one of the saints, okay? We have seen the same tactics that were used in the days of the prophets, apostles, and Yeshua Messiah. They try to persecute Yahweh's people to wear us down and turn us from Yahweh's ways, okay? This is what's taking place. All of these trials and tests are to turn you away from Yahweh, to get you to thinking that, why did Yahweh bring me here? I'm miserable. It's hot here. It's I don't have enough food. I don't have this or I don't have that. Okay, it's not Yahweh doing it. You know, the first thing I always think of in my mind when I'm going through something, we got to get this in our head. You've got to think it's not the house of Yahweh that's doing this to me. That's the first thing that should be in your head. It's not the house of Yahweh's fault. Okay? And it says, I'm going to continue on. It says, however, despite their false accusations, lies, rumors, and false charges, the saints of Yahweh have stood strong. The house of Yahweh began to wear the color orange in 2008 as a symbol that we may be persecuted, but we will endure it because we know Father Yahweh has not forsaken us. Right, house of Yahweh? So I put this saying that's on the calendar there, I put that second part into the gematria calculator. And the number is 2614. These other numbers up here are too large. They're 5 digits. So I just disregarded those and I go with the number down here, 2614. Now remember, persecuted but not forsaken, right? 2614 means to hunt down, to search for and follow after. It's from 2596 and 1377. So let's look at 2596. And that's just the word kata, and it means down, like in searching down or searching for. Okay? And it's from 1377. And it means to persecute. To persecute. Imagine that, right? Again, Yahweh, does he ever fail to amaze? No, he doesn't. He's in full control. He's in full control. It means to persecute, to follow after, to pursue, persecution, to pursue, to press, to mistreat, to harass, trouble, molest somebody. You know, this is what's taking place. This is what took place, okay? Pastor didn't do anything wrong, House of Yahweh, at all. Okay? They persecute those that live righteously. We just read in 2 Timothy 3:12, right? Those who live righteously will suffer persecution. Do you understand that that is actually something you cannot change? When I was a law student and worked in a law library, there was 3 words that they said in law were mandatory. You could not change them. Shall, will, and must. Shall, will, and must. You cannot change those words. In law, that means that it's going to take place and there's nothing you can change about that. And if you remember all the way back in Genesis, he said, you know, we're going to have to go through these troubles. We're going to have to go through it. Through much tribulation, the Apostle Shaul said in the book of Acts, we must inherit the kingdom through much tribulation. Much tribulation. Turn over to page 903 in your Book of Yahweh. Page 903. And I want to kind of give you an idea why we're persecuted but not forsaken, okay? And this is proven in Pastor's Lot number 74. Page 903. It's 2 Corinthians 4, verse 9. It says, persecuted but not forsaken. Actually, let me start in verse 7. However, we possess this treasure in vessels of earth, that the excellence of the power may be of Yahweh and not of us. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. Remember that olive press, too. Always carrying about in the body the dying of Yahshua the King, that the life of Yahshua also may be manifested in our body, in this body, in Yahshua's body, the house of Yahweh. You know why Pastor was arrested? So Yahshua's life could be manifested in this body. Let me show you. Yahshua died in 33 AY. Here it is, right here. 33, the number 33 means to lead. It means lead. It's from word number 71, and it means to lead away. It means to lead away to a court of justice and magistrate. Turn over to Yachanan 19. Yachanan 19. Yachanan 19 on page 837. And let's start on page 836. Let's start in verse 15. Now I want you to listen to who was crying out, do away with him, take him away. Listen to who was crying this out. But they cried out, away with him, nail him to a stake. Pilate said to them, should I nail your king to a stake? They, the chief priests, answered, we have no king but Caesar. Now notice, so they handed him over to be nailed to a stake, and they took Yahshua and led him away. Led him away. Remember that word definition, to be led away to a magistrate, to a court for judgment. To a justice, so-called justice for a trial, right? Now notice this. Here's Pastor's lot number 74. He was 74 years old when he was arrested, by the way, in 2008. And it means, can y'all see this? Okay, anguish, agony, a struggle for victory. Were we not told from Genesis that there's going to be a struggle between these two entities? The woman and Satan's seed. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember those scriptures? There's going to be a struggle. There's going to be a struggle. There's going to be tribulation. There's going to be persecution. Those of the flesh are going to persecute those who keep the laws of Yahweh. That is a given. Okay? It means wrestling. It means of severe mental struggles and emotions, agony, anguish. Is that not what Yahshua went through in the Garden of Gethsemane? Is that not what Pastor went through in that prison cell? When they were torturing him with cold air in the middle of February? With no blanket, a blanket that was so narrow he couldn't even put it on him? Okay? And probably the greatest agony of all that he suffered was not having a pen and paper. I guarantee you, not having a pen and paper. It's from word number 73, and it means a place of assembly as if led, a contest, an effort of anxiety, conflict, contention, fight, race, a struggle or contest, and notice, an action at law or trial, an action at law and trial. 73 is from 74, and then it goes right here to this word 71. Notice, 71 means to lead away to a court of justice, magistrate, etc. Do you see how the number 33, when Yahshua was arrested in 33 AY, ties into Pastor's lot number? Do you remember 777 actually meant, when we put it in the gematria, 777 meant lot, cup, portion. Something that pastor would have to drink from. This is your lot. This is what you're assigned to. And the reason why the apostle shows that this takes place to Yahweh's saints, to pastor, and he was talking about the apostle Shaul's arrest. The apostle Shaul was in prison as well. You remember that? The reason why these things take place is so that Yeshua's dying, his arrest and his trial and his dying could be made manifest in this body right here in these last days. And it was made manifest through the witness Yisrael Hawkins. Okay? So praise Yahweh that he is standing strong and that you're all standing strong with him. And at this time, and if you'd all please stand. It is my great honor and privilege to turn it over to the great Kohan Ilya Hawkins.
There you go, there you go. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may all be seated. As going through the news today, there's one thing that's very important that I want to be on your mind as we watch these things taking place in society and we see what's taking place in this world. And never take for granted that we're here, we're called out of this sin-sick world into a place of protection. And of course that protection comes by the complete obedience to the laws of Yahweh. Well, as we go through the news today, you're going to see utter confusion. For example, we're going to show you the wildfires that are taking place in California. If you remember, last year they were talking about droughts and how they had no rain, if they could just get a little rain. Well, listen carefully to what they blame the wildfires on. They're saying, due to the record-breaking rain we had, now we have things burning. So they need rain for this, and then, of course, the rain's bad for that. But, of course, it's not really the rain itself. There's a confusion of the mind that is taking place in our society. As the next article you'll see is dealing with Chicago. And we have shown what's going on in Chicago with the murders and the shootings and the outright lawlessness taking place in that city for years now, and it's always getting worse. They're not doing anything to make it better. Now, that's Chicago, but you can travel around. We do this when teaching the peaceful solution. You can go all around the world. You never hear anyone say it's getting better, ever. You can talk to other countries. Things are getting worse. You can go to cities in the United States of America. Things are getting worse. Well, it's because that there's a killing taking place. There's a depopulation taking place, and there's a sickness of the mind, a lawlessness taking place that comes with this utter confusion. And remember, as Daniel said, the wicked will not understand. They don't even know why things are going the way they're going, but they're taking place that way. And then we go to Venezuela. This is something taking place that, remember, Venezuela has been put under sanctions. They can't buy, sell, nor trade. That's being done by the United States. Remember who receives its authority, as Revelation 6 says, from the first beast. And these sanctions are being implemented. Now these people are fleeing. If you notice, it'll say that they're fleeing because there's no food, there's very little water, there's utter destruction taking place in and around where they live. Where they're fleeing, they're looking for refuge. That's what refugees do. They're looking for a place of protection. They're looking for a place to go. I want to read you something very quickly. Keep this in your mind, because we know that 2 billion people will flow to the house of Yahweh. Isaiah 2:2 and Micaiah 4:1-3. In these last days, eventually, many will go and say, let us go up to the place and learn of his way, to that great promotion, the house of Yahweh, to where that judge sits and that administration will rule, and we will learn of his way. Write these down, because these are something that we need to know and we need to implement for ourselves. Prohibitive law number 252 says, do not mistreat a stranger. Do not mistreat a stranger. Now, if you cannot mistreat a stranger, when you're on your daily work crew and you're looking at each other, how much more dear should a fellow brother or sister be? If Yahweh says you must not mistreat a stranger. So don't mistreat someone you don't know, because there's going to be a lot of people come here we don't know. And praise Yahweh. In fact, when we all came, we had to get to know each other. We were all strangers to each other. Also, remember prohibitive law number 254. Do not return a slave who has fled from God worship. How many people here have fled from God worship? Who here was once a servant to sin and let sin rule in their lives? Well, of course, we came to the house of Yahweh and we sought Yahweh. Just as these refugees are fleeing. And remember what we've seen in Africa and Somalia and South Sudan. Remember all of the things we see where people are fleeing. And they're fleeing this blood avenger that sits upon the 7 hills of Rome, who is taking lives as they so desire. Well, we're supposed to be studying to show ourselves approved, so we can help and assist these people, because remember, peace can only come through education. That's the only way peace will ever come. Many people can come and go up into the house of Yahweh and remember what they said. And they will, and he will, they will, they and he, those who rule with Yisrael Hawkins, that's the they will teach those refugees, those people fleeing, they will teach them of his way. Well, when you see these people in Venezuela and think about the people in Africa and think about those that are fleeing, even in Europe, you see them fleeing from the Middle East and Syria, they're looking for a place of safety. They just want a place where they can lay their head, know their family is safe, and they have something to eat, and they have some kind of life. Right now, they have nothing. Absolutely nothing. Imagine if you were to take up today to go to a country that you've never been to, and all you could take were the clothes on your back. The Peaceful Solution recommends and commands you to have empathy. You cannot use or teach the Peaceful Solution without empathy. So remember these things. Once again, do not let it slip your mind. If you cannot oppress a stranger at this house of protection, how much more should you look with a brother or sister in greater honor? And I do mean honor. Praise Yahweh. Well, continuing off of that, if you remember what Pastor had brought years ago, and of course Malachi Martin said this about Russia and China, of course, teaming together, and they're trying to combat. Remember, they're trying to come out on top. Russia, you have the United States, and you also have the Vatican, which ties in NATO and of course the UN. You have all of these trying to come out on top. Well, for the first time ever, China and Russia held joint military drills with warships in the Baltic Sea. Now, that's the northern part of Europe, and they're holding these drills, and many, many people don't like this. A lot, because what you have around that northern part of the Baltic Sea, you have a lot of NATO members in NATO headquarters. They don't like that, and they're speaking against it. But I want you to think, how many times do you see other militaries holding drills, and it's considered standard? It's okay. Nothing wrong with it. Well, of course, it's because there's a confrontation that's building, and we can see it building. Now, in the Middle East, there's a push for power, and there's a show on RT, it's called Crosstalk, and I think the man explains it very well about, you see Saudi Arabia, and you have this push with Qatar. Of course, Qatar, they're putting sanctions on Qatar, and you have Bahrain that is also along with Saudi Arabia, and they're putting these sanctions on them, trying to pressure them. Well, this pressure you see, as the man explains, they're trying to implement a ruling power or a world order, a new order. In other words, you won't buy, sell, nor trade unless you do it our way. We will rule and we will govern this. Now, keep in mind, these people, you can see what's going on in Syria when they reject this world order. There's oppression. They have to flee for their lives. They will literally go in and annihilate the city. They will kill them. Imagine if you went home and you had to listen to bombs drop every night. We just had the celebration of war here not long ago, known as the 4th of July. Well, as you laid in your bed and you heard these fireworks go off, which it was impossible not to hear them, imagine if that was real bombs dropping outside your house. Imagine if that was something that was dropping so close to you, you didn't know if your neighbor was still alive the next morning. What would you do? Where would you go? That's what these people are going through, and that is the empathy that we're told we must have. So when these people come, we look at them and we see what they've been through before we've ever met them. That stranger, we understand what they need because we've been trained. We know what they need more than they know what they need. They just know they want to get away. They want to escape the death. Well, that's what we're commanded to do. And pay close attention about this power struggle taking place in the Middle East, because it is a struggle for complete power. It's not for this country or that country, but it's complete power. And of course, that brings Iran into it also. And then, of course, the Catholic Church, remember Pastor brought years ago that they owned a lot of hospitals and they were going to own a lot of hospitals. Well, they just arrested 2 civilians for embezzling money from one of the major Catholic Church hospitals in Italy. Now, the interesting part is they embezzled the money, they stole the money to fix up a very high-ranking cardinal's apartment. But no charges are being brought against him. And, of course, he said he had no idea that they spent that $500,000 on his apartment. He didn't know where it come from. You would think if someone spends $500,000 where you live, you'd have an idea, or well, at least want to know where it come from. But you see the confusion in this. And then it goes into talking to some news reporters about Pope Francis. If you remember, we played during the Feast of Passover a couple years ago about how people are leaving the Catholic Church. They're fleeing the Catholic Church. Well, the people are now standing up and saying, well, we thought Pope Francis would be a great pope, but we don't think so anymore. It's time for him to go. Well, of course, they don't really know, other than they're not hearing the same old norm. It's not fitting their life. They want someone to tell them they can do what they want to do and then go live your life. You're free to go do what you want to do. Just say a couple Hail Marys and you'll be okay. Well, of course, this is not sufficing the people anymore because they're dying of cancer. They're dying of heart disease. Their children are being born with their hearts on the outside of their bodies. They're fleeing to their gods, but those gods that sit on the 7 hills have no answers. Well, people don't want to live in misery. But once again, the wicked do not understand. They don't see yet, but they will. They will with the knowledge that comes forth only through the one sent, Yisrael Hawkins, and through this great house to everyone that tethers themselves to the greatest teacher on the face of the earth. And then in Israel this last week, they had what is called as the Day of Rage. I want to read you an article that came out this week in the Haaretz newspaper, and remember the Oslo Accord. Remember the prophetic word that we put out here recently, the June 2017 prophetic word. And of course it says Yahweh's prophetic network, today's news fulfilling Bible prophecy. And we have here the Oslo Accord, that agreement that was signed September the 13th of 1993. Well, remember Benjamin Netanyahu right now, who's receiving a lot of pressure. He's being investigated for corruption. Remember, Ehud Olmert was also investigated and convicted for corruption. Just got out of prison last week. Well, there's a lot of pressure being put on Benjamin Netanyahu to do something. Well, Haaretz.com, I'll show you the article. It says, Netanyahu and rival Bennett compromise over bill dividing Jerusalem. Now, that was this last week. And it says, ministers greenlight a bill that requires a supermajority concede sovereignty over any part of Jerusalem, but only a simple majority would be needed to give up land by redrawing Jerusalem's borders. Now, it goes on to say that twice the capital was saved from this disaster. This was before this law was put in. But they're saying it was twice saved by Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. That was someone who was brought up on investigations and charged. He saved this from being divided. Well, why are they wanting to divide it? Well, notice in the last part of this news article it says, in the past, so before this law was implemented, in the past, various governments managed to obtain the support of at least 61 MKs for conceding territory. Well, what did they have enough votes to do? The Oslo Accords were supported by 61. If this law had been in effect before then, the Oslo Accord could be in effect today. But it wasn't time for these things to take place. Very important to watch, because this day of rage that the Palestinians are calling what's taking place in Israel right now, a day of rage, there was a lot of clashes on the Temple Mount, a lot of fighting on the Temple Mount. And of course, they're crying out to Jordan. Remember, Jordan is the caretaker of the Temple Mount. They're supposed to oversee and make sure these rules are implemented to govern this area that right now it's not divided. Everybody thinks they have to have that one part. Well, at the very end of the news, I want you to listen to it. It says Israel and Jordan are looking to find something. They're looking to find something. I want you to remember this. Remember a peaceful solution to building the next temple in Jerusalem? Well, remember what that says. Remember what it looks like. And then listen very carefully to what they say at the end. At this time, if we could go ahead and play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, a lot in the news this week between the Israelis and the Palestinians. The violence has certainly erupted in that area, so we'll cover those stories, as well as a big scandal taking place with the Vatican. So we have the details on that as well. But first, close to 40 big wildfires are burning over the western United States right now. Now, probably the most aggressive blaze is at the foothills of Yosemite National Park. Called the Detweiler Fire, it has burned over 45,000 acres of land, doubling its size in the last 24 hours. Now, Highway 49 was closed as a wall of flames leapt across the road. Now, well over 2,000 firefighters have been battling the out-of-control fire since the beginning of the week.
That's right, but by Tuesday, when the wind started pushing the fire closer to a community of 1,500 homes, Jerry Brown, the California governor, had to declare a state of emergency. Thousands of residents were ordered to evacuate the town of Mariposa, which quickly became like a ghost town.
Now, peak tourist time at Yosemite is threatened by the vastness of this fire, knocking out some power lines in the area and threatening more. Now, because of record rains that recently ended the drought conditions in California, there is now a lot of dense vegetation that has grown up since then, fueling the wildfire.
Oh, interesting. Well, around-the-clock airdrops of water and retardant by over a dozen choppers and air tankers are part of the efforts to bring the blaze under control. But CAL FIRE has asked for even more help to get ahead of it. When last checked, Jeff, the fire was 50% contained.
Well, a fire of another kind is being fought in Chicago, Illinois this summer. A crackdown by Chicago police and federal authorities to stop gun violence. Now, in June, the Department of Justice announced the city would participate in a program called Crime Gun Strike Force. Now, the goal of this program is to get illegal guns and repeat gun offenders off the city's streets.
58-year-old Willie Cooper, a businessman and community activist, was one of 11 people who were shot and killed in Chicago over the weekend. Cooper, who worked at an anti-violence center, which provides local teenagers with jobs, was shot just a block away from that center.
Another victim of the weekend violence was a 10-year-old boy who was riding in his car with his father when a van pulled up alongside them and began shooting. Now, the boy was taken to the hospital but did not make it. And Katan, this is the fourth child that has died this year so far in the Chicago gun violence. Now, his death as well as the others are still under investigation.
The Chicago Tribune recently published an article showing a spike in the number of homicides was due because of two main reasons, according to experts. The first reason was the release of the police dash cam footage showing police officer Jason Van Dyke fatally shooting Laquan McDonald 16 times, which were reported on sometime in the past. And secondly, the Justice Department launched this investigation of the Chicago Police Department, which revealed how officers were using excessive force and unfairly targeting African American residents.
Now, experts say the uptick in shootings in the Windy City became highly visible in the year 2016 when the city saw a 57% increase in homicides from 2015 to 2016. Now, 418 people were murdered in 2015 compared to 754 murders in 2016. Now, the amount of people shot increased also by 46%. Of course, not everybody dies as a result of the shooting, but that number has also increased. 2,964 people were shot in 2015 compared to 4,338 people shot in 2016.
That's one too many. Well, in 2017, it's of course not looking any better, with 375 people already having died because of gun violence in Chicago this year, and 4.5 months are left to go yet. So it's unlikely that the numbers will continue. It's likely, that the numbers will continue to increase even with this new program in place.
Right, because they have tried other programs and also have not seen any results, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, Venezuela is facing a crisis that has been in the making for several years. As OPEC set the price at oil at all-time lows, the world's 10th largest oil producer is feeling the impact. Oil accounts for 95% of the country's exports and 25% of its gross domestic product. Now, as a result of the falling prices, the economy is hard hit, so much so that food has become very scarce.
That's right. In fact, many people are heading across the border to Colombia in search of work and food. They're also fleeing the violence that has escalated between the country's military and the protesters, blaming the government for the economic collapse. Well, 90 people have died during the protests, and some of them actually find it hard not to get involved with the protesting, they say, because elderly neighbors are actually coming and knocking on their door for food or coffee.
Well, it is unlikely that things will get better in the near future. Venezuela's socialist president, Nicolas Maduro, is refusing to back down from his power grab, even as U.S. President Donald Trump threatened sanctions on the country. Now, the opposition has planned a nationwide strike for tomorrow. So, Katan, it looks like the problem will only escalate if they don't find a peaceful solution to their problems.
Well, in other world news, Europe is up in arms over the latest naval exercises getting underway. Now, various countries have been holding military naval drills off and on since 2012, just one way to prepare their troops for conflicts. But the latest announcement has provoked a strong reaction. For the first time ever, Russia and China are teaming up to hold joint naval drills.
As if that weren't enough to cause a stir, they will be heading away from territorial waters to hold the week-long drills in the Baltic Sea. And remember, the Baltic Sea is surrounded by the northern European countries on all sides, as well as several NATO bases.
Getting close to home there. Well, headlines in Western media have been exploding with propaganda about the 2017 joint sea drills between the two Asian countries, using words like invasion and war, while warning this could be a challenge to NATO. The Daily Star headline read, Russia and China launch massive mock invasion near Europe's border this week. Well, the Express headlines really blew things up, saying, Russia and China play war. Destroyers descend on Kaliningrad for major Baltic Sea drills. So they're really getting the people, excited and hyped up about this because they're, like we said before, really close to Europe's home, knocking on their door.
So what is all the hype and concern about? Well, it's simple. This is the first time Chinese warships have ever ventured into this part of the world. And if that wasn't enough of a threat, they are being joined by the less than popular these days Russian fleet. So as you mentioned, it's, that traveling, and it's a little bit too close.
That's right. Well, Russian ambassador to China, Andrei Denisov, has this to say about the North European countries' concerns. He said the Baltic states repeat their usual incantations, but at the same time, they take for granted the fact that NATO is deploying large forces on their territory.
And this type of response is nothing new. If you remember, we reported about last year when a Russian fleet sailed around Europe, and that sparked similar headlines. And some European countries were even considering sending out vessels at that time to intercept them.
Yeah, so we see the same things coming from both countries, NATO, China and Russia, but everybody kind of gets on edge when it's occurring from the other party. Right. Well, the paranoia over Russian Navy invasion has been around a long time. Of course, take the Swedish nation, for instance. For over 20 years, they insisted Russian submarines were lurking along their coastline. But come to find out, as the then Swedish Prime Minister Ingvar Carlsson announced in the mid-90s, quote, it's a sad fact that what was originally stated to be intrusions into our waters have proved to be minks. Well, that's right. The furry swimming sea-like animals was what was actually in the waters, and they were saying this was Russian submarines.
Wow, just a little bit off.
Just a little bit in that situation.
Well, the U.S. and allied countries have just conducted their own massive exercises in Eastern Europe. Saber Guardian is what they call it, took place with some 25,000 personnel from 22 states. Now, this latest drill is the biggest of its kind in 5 years. Writer and political commentator John White says that the media is inflaming the situation by demonizing both Russia and China, painting them as evil empires.
Well, in other news, the Vatican is back in the headlines with another scandal. Our correspondent Larry McGee has more on this story. Larry, just how widespread is this latest Vatican scandal?
Two officials from the Vatican's Bambino Gesù Hospital are accused of embezzling funds to the tune of $500,000. Strangely enough, however, the theft was reportedly committed to finance renovations on the apartment of one of the Vatican's cardinals, and at one point the move was even defended by the hospital's president as an investment, with the argument that the cardinal's apartment would be used on some occasions for fundraising efforts by the hospital. The priest in question, however, Cardinal Bertone, who ranked second in power in the Vatican during the public reign of Benedict III, was not charged and alleges that he was unaware concerning any stolen funds. Analysts and those disaffected with the Vatican say the credibility of the standing pontiff is at stake concerning the incident, and the way that he addresses the matter, they believe, will be an indication of how serious he is regarding financial reform. The hospital from which the resources were taken is one of the leading pediatric institutions in Europe. The trial of the two officials implicated in the scheme comes during reports of a crackdown by Pope Francis, who is quoted as saying, "The worst cancer in a hospital is corruption." Publicized efforts such as the aforementioned are contributing to the popularity of the Pope, at least according to recent reports. Questions concerning the reigning pontiff were given to analysts on both sides of the aisle recently. The first question posed was, what exactly are the objections of critics concerning Pope Francis, given his increasing popularity amongst both Catholics and non-Catholics alike? The response, given by Matthew Smith's literary editor at First Things magazine, is that when Pope Francis was first elected into office, he celebrated his election with the hope that the incoming leader would be effective as a pontiff. The editor says that he has since changed his mind after seeing that Pope Francis is executing his plan of supposed reform at the expense of the Catholic Church and its most valuable members, the children, whom he believes have been orphaned as a consequence of the Western lifestyle, and it is them, he contends, that are objecting to Pope Francis. To the argument that Francis, who is seen by some as liberal in his policies, is merely avoiding the losing battle of trying to enforce conservative values in an age of liberalism, Smith points to recent conservative victories in the U.S. and Europe as indications that, among the people, the opposite is actually true. The young Catholic says he believes the pontiff's papacy represents a revenge of the past, where various church leaders from the 60s and 70s have reemerged to push their brand of Catholicism. On the question of whether or not the differences between the Pope and the laity has caused some to doubt his sincerity with regard to Marianism, Matthew says that Catholicism is a motley mix of people, and there is no guarantee of someone who is Catholic being perfectly right all the time or perfectly moral all the time. As to the Pope's constant refrain and call for love and mercy, Smith says there's nothing wrong with that, but what is necessary is a true love and a true mercy. He then quoted a verse from the Bible where justice and mercy are said to meet, and stated further that that is what the church is missing. He and others believe there has been too much of what is called anti-onanism, which he defines as a tendency to suggest that the truth of the gospel and mercy is contrary to the law. The merciless slaughter of people in the Euphrates region has not received the attention that many global analysts feel is rightly due, and certain talk shows this week sought to break through what's being called fake news and offer an unedited perspective on the trends sweeping the Middle East. Independent journalist Joe Loria says it's very easy to get lost in all the details, and they are so frighteningly complex, especially in Syria. For an overall view, he says, if one is looking for a really big picture, you have to look at U.S.-Iranian relations, and in the subtext of that, Saudi-Iranian relations, and below that, the standoff between Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Egypt against Qatar, which he believes could be a prelude to conflict with Iran. The conflict between the U.S.-backed Saudis and Syria, Lauria says, overshadows the entire region. It is their proxy wars and conflicts that have to be brought to an end, he says, and he believes America is the only nation with the influence to bring both parties together and quell their conflicts, which have rippled outwards, producing additional fighting in Bahrain, Afghanistan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. The journalist says that has to be dealt with, but he feels as if the U.S., as opposed to helping, is actually worsening things by lowering itself to side with Sunni Muslims and help fight local wars. Middle East analyst Sami Nader contributes that what is really at stake today is the new order in the Middle East, because the order that was pushed 100 years ago is gone, and now there is a new order, but with different players and different regional powers. For instance, he says Russia is getting a big role in Syria, especially in the last 2 years. The United States is there active, along with Iran, and also to a lesser extent, Saudi Arabia. So the new order, he says, is set by the new regional powers, and the name of the game today is fighting Daesh, while the core issue is who will be replacing Daesh, and that will determine the areas of influence that will be controlled by the regional powers already mentioned. To recap, the analyst says that what is at stake today in the Euphrates region is the new order that will define the balance of power for years to come. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
It's interesting they mentioned the New World Order in that segment there. We mentioned not too long ago Henry Kissinger, who was also involved in that and was a very instrumental part in the things that revolved around that. So we'll see how that plays out in a few months.
Well, Palestinians, Muslims, and the Muslim world have started a day of rage in response to Israel's restrictions on the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, Al-Quds. Now, while Israel says that it doesn't seek to change the status quo at Al-Aqsa, Islam's third holiest site, yet many see this as Israel's giving in to right-wing anti-Palestinian Islamophobia, elements of Netanyahu's government and Israeli society.
Groups seeking to take over the mosque are rejoicing at these events and an opportune moment to act. Israeli security forces attacked Palestinian protesters at Al-Quds and across the occupied West Bank, firing live ammunition, rubber bullets, and tear gas during rallies, which the Palestinians have called, like we said, a day of rage. Now, this was, of course, declared by several Palestinian factions.
Well, again, these protests were in response to Israel's heightened restrictions on the Al-Aqsa Mosque, including the installation of metal detectors, cameras, and additional security forces. Israeli police also prevented men under the age of 50 from entering the Old City and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which forced Palestinians to hold Friday prayers on the streets. Now, some men over 60 were even turned back after trying to enter.
One Palestinian man told Press TV that it is their right to pray and practice their freedom at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and nothing is going to stop them. In Ramallah, hundreds of Palestinians held prayers in the main street that leads to the Israeli checkpoint that led to Kalandia, which is one of the entrances to Jerusalem Al-Quds.
Those protests also turned violent as Israeli police fired live ammunition and tear gas to disperse the crowds. Protests broke out in several other places, including Bethlehem and Hebron. Another Palestinian man spoke of how Israel made a racist decision to completely control Al-Aqsa, and he said that Palestinians will remain united in the face of their aggression, and we will continue defending our mosque. And it's actually those type of attitudes and that generate so much conflict, because neither side really seems to make any concessions there.
Right. Well, Israel have boosted up their forces in occupied Jerusalem in light of recent protests, yet Palestinians say that they will use every means available to stand against the occupation forces and defend their holy site.
Michael Lang, president of the American Institute for Foreign Policy, said of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, "This is a situation that I believe, if it doesn't ratchet completely out of control, would be able to be resolved with reasonable negotiations between the Israelis and the Jordanians as to how the status quo could be restored to Alaska." And of course, keep in mind, Katan, that Jordan is the one that actually has the custodianship of the site.
Yeah. Well, Lane continued, it would make sense for the Jordanians to be a part of the negotiation with Israel and Palestinians as the custodians of Al-Aqsa, and to make sure that the Palestinians, the Jordanians, making sure that they have their needs met with regards to the mosque.
Well, the hatred continues near Lion's Gate in Jerusalem's Old City as Palestinians clash with Israeli security forces after 2 Israeli police officers were shot dead last Friday, which prompted additional security forces to be in place in what is called Haram el-Sharif to Muslims and Temple Mount to Jews.
That's right. The installation of metal detectors has angered Palestinians who claim that Israel is trying to expand control of the compound. They have been nightly demonstrations there from protesters, with Muslim leaders calling for mass protest ahead of Friday's prayers, when tens of thousands of worshipers are expected at the holy site.
Palestinian prayer goers say that they can't go in to pray through an electronic gate, so they stand outside to pray. Now, Israeli security spokesman said extra forces will be around areas of the Old City, the walls of Jerusalem, the different gates, and around the Temple Mount in order to allow the prayers to take place on the Temple Mount and to be able to respond immediately to any temple-related issues.
Interesting. Well, of course, in 1967, this hotly contested site was given to Jordan to control. Now, Jews are allowed to visit but not pray at the site, while Muslims have access for prayer. The Israeli government says it is in close contact with Jordan to find a peaceful solution to the crisis. Well, if a peaceful solution is what the nations want, then all they have to do is look to the place of peace called the House of Yahweh. Now, the cost of peace is not measured in bombs, bloodshed, and threats of war. In fact, if you want peace, you don't need millions, billions, or even trillions of dollars to achieve it. All you need is 1 cent. And that 1 cent is the 1 sent by Yahweh in the last days, and his name is Yisrael Hawkins. The laws found in the Holy Scriptures are the keys to open the doors to the way of life and peace. Contact the House of Yahweh today and request your free copies of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can also visit our website at www.ypnnews.com. And remember, any emails you can email at info@yahweh.com. For any international calls, you can call the number on your screen. And once again, we'd like to remind you of 2 programs that are out there on the market for you. The first one is the Yisrael Says program. You can learn more by going to www.yisraelsays.com. And the second one is the Ask Yisrael program. And you can also learn about that program by going to www.askyisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, the last day's teacher of peace, Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.
At this time, if everyone would please stand, I would like to introduce the voice of that peaceful solution, the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrael Abel Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Reach way out there.
Come on now, big time. Come on. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. I know what y'all are cheering about. It's those falafels. I heard that. We used to get those in Israel when we went over there. The last time I think I overeat on them, and then I didn't have them for years, and now we got them here in the house. What a blessing! Isn't that something? Praise Yahweh. Falafels in 2 months to the feast of Yahweh. 2 months. Wow. I can't get over these blessings. There's someone asked, said, nuclear war didn't come on December 24th. The guy left. He came here and rented a house and thinking that nuclear war was going to start on December 24th because the Pope said something about it. And I said, well, everyone needs to know about it. I don't think it's going to, but everybody needs to know about it. And of course, after it didn't come, he said, well, he gave up his house, wanted his rent back, and he left the House of Yahweh. He came here thinking he was going to escape, the nuclear war, and then he didn't come here for the right reason. The right reason is these blessings right here. Look at that. Wow. And learning how to stop war, not start war. It's not start wars. We're reading right here. I hope that guy's paying attention. I hope there's not too many like him. But this headline says, World Faces Worst Humanitarian Crisis Since 1945. I don't know if you're staying up with the news other than what we have, but you really need to pay attention to it and get the tape and listen to it again and again and again to remind you what you're here for. You're here to be proving yourself worthy to take a place in the greatest kingdom in the universe. Now, that's what you're here for. Whether you get killed in nuclear war or not, I'll resurrect you, that's for sure. Yahweh has appointed that to me. Praise Yahweh. The next headline, no one is paying attention to the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II. No one. Well, they really don't care. Your scripture tells you that in the last days, the pearliest times will come. Men will be lovers of their own selves, not caring. The House of Yahweh is the only one that's looking forward to helping people come out of these war-raging nations and learn the way to peace. Surely anyone can understand that. We're the only ones on earth teaching that. No one else is training to come out of war. Read Micaiah 4, 1 through 3, and it tells you they will learn war no more because of this house right here. Yes, that's our job. We're training to keep it, to guard and keep Yahweh's way, which is a way of peace, joy, love, abundant living. This article from Google, if you type in Google and put a peaceful solution to end world wars, this will come up for you right here. Okay, the top one there, the headline. And let's see. Well, here we go, Google. Now you type in that right there with Google, and you're going to see that come up, and then my picture and the articles. Now that's a peaceful solution that's being taught. Right underneath it, of course, is Netanyahu and another world leader whispering in his ear their moves that they're going to make. this broadcast, the Facebook and the live broadcast, Matthew sent us a thing here. It says a list of countries that have used the Israel Says program in the last 90 days. There's 21 different countries here that use this, and thousands of people in that 21 countries that we know of right now. And got a list of the countries here that is coming from that have used this. Last week's live Sabbath sermons, comments, likes, and shares on Facebook, official House of Yahweh. These come from different countries around the world. I'm so happy, it says, to see a live show. I've been watching the archives. Wow, he says. One from Mexico here close by the way. One from Yemen, one from Sudan. Well, they're just all over, but it's a list of the people who actually are watching this live in their countries that is being broadcast right now. They're seeing me live. I think from our technology right now, they could be asking questions and be heard here by one of our elders and answer their questions live. I think that's the way we have it. The stats from Israel Says program over the last 90 days, 4.1 thousand. That was going up pretty fast and then leveled off. That is what we're reaching the world with, and you're a part of it. You're a part of it as long as you stay. Now, if you go back to the world, I'm afraid you won't be a part of it much longer. Now, listen closely. In its first ever UN vote, the Holy See says no to nuclear wars. In its first only, its first ever, in its first ever UN vote, the Holy See, that's the Vatican, says no to nuclear weapons. Well, of course, the Scripture shows it's coming. The House of Yahweh is the only one that's bringing this warning. Many are trying to get us not to. Some are trying to force it, but it's going out. And the nuclear war is going to take place in this generation. That's Matthew 24, 33 and 34. As the great Kohan covered today, the Gematria backs it up. Isaiah 24, 1 through 6 shows it. The great burning. Malachi 4, 1 through 4 shows it. The great burning that's going to burn up the wicked. The wicked are ones who join Satan in God worship. Yes, that's the wicked. And it's shown throughout the Holy Scripture. The evil gods. Be like the evil gods. It's really desirable. It's really desirable. I think we're going to have a series now of what is God worship, because listen closely, believe it or not, if you go from here to Six Flags and you take part in their programs, it's God worship. You've cut yourself off from Yahweh. You've been brought here to His house to be studying, training, proving yourselves to Yahweh. There is so many different kinds of God worship, you can't imagine all of them, but the deception that's in this world and trying to tempt you into being a part of it, any part of it, as Jacob said, any part of it, and you become a breaker of all of Yahweh's laws. You're standing up for the gods who are evil leaders of the world, So if you go out and have a part of this in any way, remember that when you're tempted by Satan, because this is summertime, vacation time, crazy idiot time, Satan worship time. Let's take a break. Let's take a break. Oh, I need a break. You need to get your head in your studies and find joy in Yahweh is what you really need to do. You haven't found it yet, but you can if you'll just start to work on it. And one thing you could do is keep in mind, if I could get this picture shown to you, this is millions of people, just like, can you draw that in real close? Really close. You see that baby there, just skin and bones? You see the mother behind it, no feed? You know, there's millions of cases like this right now. 30 million in one country, 60 million in another country. All done by Satan and her evil gods. And when you become a part of that in any way, you're spitting in Yahweh's face and saying, I want to take a break and go to Satan for a little while and refresh. It's so desirable to go to Satan for just a little while and refresh. Think of what you're doing and think of what you're casting away. We're going to stop this kind of stuff right here. That's what it's leading to. And it's leading to nuclear war. No matter what the Catholic Church says now, they have brought this about. And there's no stopping it. It's going to take place. They can't stop it. They can't stop these nuclear wars. They're already set in motion, and they're not going to stop. And after a third of the people are killed in that fourth part of the earth where all of this is taking place, how did he know in 96 AY this was going to be taking place right now in this generation? You'd have to be an idiot to think that this is not fulfillment of that prophecy. It's all over and around the great river Euphrates and that fourth part of the earth. Try to figure it out. Put a little thinking in it. You won't get it from Six Flags. You won't get it from the water pools, the swimming pools. You'll get death from them. You'll get poop in the swimming poops. Yes, you're swimming in somebody else's sewage. And they do it for fun. This is the idiot world we're living in, the same ones that's starving these people to death. That's a part of God worship right there. In its first ever UN vote, they say no nuclear war. Well, that certainly stopped it, didn't it? Wow, we can have peace now? Is that what you're saying? So the war's all stopped or what? What do we do here? Nothing. Nothing. Give me your money now. I got to get back to Rome and put it in the bank. Hawaii is preparing for a North Korea nuclear attack. That's the next headline. Hawaii. And they say from this right here, this could lead the world into nuclear darkness, nuclear winter. I know you're saying, well, we could use a little of that right now with this hot weather, but it's going to get hotter. 3 Palestinians killed in a clash. Now, this is over the Temple Mount. Now, you've got to see this picture. If I can get it on the screen here, you got to see that picture. If you look right in the middle in the bottom line, you'll see Netanyahu. Can y'all see that? Now, this is a group of people. Israeli cabinet meets in tunnel beneath Al-Asmas, in a tunnel underneath there. Shaul and I went back in there the last time we were in Israel. We walked as far as they'd go, which wasn't very far. The first time I went was in 82, I believe it was. And we went for quite a while. In fact, we found some people that was lost back in those tunnels and I think I brought that out in some sermons in Abelin when the sanctuary was there. But we found people that was lost and showed them how to get back because we had just come. But there was quite a maze of tunnels. Shaul and I only went about maybe 100 yards or something like that or less. But this is underneath now. It's beneath the mosque that this meeting took place, and Netanyahu sitting right in the middle of this, May 29th, 2017. They had this meeting underneath the mosque. You got that? Get it, understand it now. I want to show you what's taking place. It's in progress right now. As the wars we see in that fourth part of the earth are in progress right now. The wars that was prophesied by Daniel, by Isaiah, by Jeremiah, Yechezkel, even as far back as Genesis, these wars were prophesied, but they got more details in Yeshua's explanation in Matthew 24 that no one understood until this time period when we started pointing out, hey, Rome, you're going to get burned. You're going to get caught up in your own 1-hour nuclear burning that you have created. No, you can't just say no nuclear war. That won't change a thing. The scripture shows you're going to have a 1-hour nuclear burning, and that's what scientists says now, that 1 hour is all we need. The scientists say that that's all it's going to take is from 30 minutes to an hour, and it's going to be over. And the people, the wicked, all who do wickedly, and this is what puts the Vatican in trouble. The Vatican is the leader of wickedness with all the religions today. We've been pointing that out to them now for quite some time. The Vatican, the leader of the kings of the earth. Vatican, the Vatican, that word Vatican means the divining serpent. The divining serpent. Why would they name that the divining serpent? That's exactly who they're worshiping, and they know they're worshiping Satan. You can't read the Holy Scriptures and not know that these people, they know they're worshiping Satan. They know they're not serving Yahweh. The Pope openly calls Yahweh a vengeful God, and calls the Savior a ruthless Savior, and says he's going to Mary because she's the loving, merciful goddess that's going to save them. Mary can't even save herself. This goddess you're worshiping can't even save herself. She's prophesied to die herself. She made herself a god. She made all of her sons into gods to rise up above Yahweh in his throne. That's Isaiah, the 14th chapter. Well, here in Jerusalem now, we see this meeting taking place. The date is May 29, 2017. In Jerusalem, secret sale of church land to developers revealed. Secret sale of church land to developers revealed. Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, Theophilus III. Have you heard that name? Theophilus III? That rings a bell, doesn't it? I think it does. Theophilus III. Amazing. I had it right here in front of me. How about that? Now, if I could just draw that in, I want to show you Theophilus III. Now, do you recognize him? That's one of the 10 kings that just joined the Vatican. Remember? There's 10 of them. The scripture prophesied there would be 10 of them. You see this one? There's the 10 all together. See, you can pick him out easily. Theophilus III, he's very noticeable, and get another look at him there. He said he is dressing like he thought Moses looked. I don't think Moses could run in front of all them chariots and things and look like that. It just doesn't match, I think he's going to fail in most any race, in fact. Okay, it says Greek Orthodox patriot of Jerusalem. He's the patriot of Jerusalem? Theophilus III. Did you know all that? He's leaders, Catholic leaders, the Orthodox Christian. That's what they call Egyptian Christians, Coptic Christians. That's where Coptic Catholics Universal came from. Started in Egypt with Ham. He's the start of it. Egypt. They say, well, this is probably called Egypt because it means it's got black land, so they called it Misery. That was the name of it in Egyptian. And so they say they probably got that name probably from the she-wolf, and she told them what to call it because it's got black land. And they're probably a bunch of liars and deceivers that's trying to cover up what the word means. It's the name Egypt. That name means darkness. It means deception, evil. It's not because it has black land. You can follow black land all up through the great river Euphrates on both sides. It also has red land. It's called the desert. In fact, most of Egypt is the desert, and most of it is red. So what excuse do they have to call it black? It doesn't make any sense. No, it means darkness. It means deception. It also means destruction. Darkness. Your land is going to be filled. Your diviners are going to be filled with darkness. Remember Jeremiah 23? The Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, Theophilus III, leads the Orthodox Christian washing of the feet ceremony outside the church of the Holy Sepulchre. The first thing the sightseers, the tour leaders, point out is this rock on the side of this building where Yahshua stumbled and he put his hand against the wall, knocked a big old hole in that wall. I tell you, he must have been some kind of giant, Yahshua did. He wasn't any taller than I am, but he knocked a hole way up here. I couldn't even reach it. I don't know how. He must have flew up there with that cross, that big sword on his shoulder. You see the lies that they get in? Christianity is nothing but lies. And this she-wolf, she keeps filling them full of lies, and they keep spreading it to the world, and the world actually believes it. You're the only ones on the face of the earth that Yahweh is drawing out of this deception. You here. It's called, as the great deacon brought out today, the House of Yahweh. Find the place. Seek, Yahshua said. Seek first the kingdom. That means habitation. It means house. Seek first the house of Yahweh and his righteousness. The house of Yahweh, he says, go to the place where I choose to place my name. Now that's what you got to figure out where to go. Where I choose to place my name. Where would that be? Not in Jerusalem. He's not going to be worshipped there, or in Israel. Well, he says in the chief of the nations. And then Zechariah said, in a God-forsaken place that's don't even exist at this time. It's going to be established by two men. And the last one, called the branch, is going to have Yeshua as a high priest. This was before Yeshua was born. Before he was born, think of that. Many years. But he's going to be the high priest of two men, one of them that branches out and builds the house of Yahweh. And the chief of the nations, west of Abelin, Abelin, west of. You go due east, and you'll hit Abelin, Abel Israel. Come west, and you will come to Texas and hit Abelin, Texas. Go a little bit further and you'll hit the city of Abel. Well, this guy is selling the land. He's raising a great deal of rejections here. The Greek Orthodox Church secretly sold 500 dumens. Now, this is just one sale. He's been doing this for quite some time. That's 124 acres of land in West Jerusalem. West Jerusalem, this belongs to the Palestinians, West Jerusalem. Of course, they keep taking it, but nevertheless. Now, the next article, this is breaking news. Is underground construction under Jerusalem preparing for the third temple? That's the name of it. Can you read it? If we can get it, the headlines there. Now, can you zero in there? There you go. Is underground construction under Jerusalem preparing for third temple? Well, people are beginning to ask questions. Temple Mount tension. Police, this now is taking place just a few days ago. Temple Mount tensions. Police, army prepare for massive Friday clashes. Netanyahu weighs removing these new security measures. Confrontations expected in Jerusalem, West Bank, and Gaza as Muslims custodian calls for massive Elas prayers. Report U.S. working to reach a compromise. Muslim worshippers pray outside the temple. Army and police are preparing for confrontations. The army is also preparing for the possibility of confrontations in Gaza and West Bank. The White House voiced its concerns regarding the tensions on Wednesday night, calling on Israel and Jordan to find a solution to the restrained situation on the Temple Mount. Well, another article I've got, I don't have it here handy, but it says that Netanyahu is making it clear that the Temple Mount is not going to be released anyway soon. Well, is construction going on under there? What do we got going? Well, one thing for sure, I know that you got for sure, and that's you can believe the prophecies. 100%. Let's see. Well, that's a secret sale. Another story of it is the secret sale of land. The nuclear bombs. The nuclear bombs didn't fall on December 12th. There's a bunch of bombs fell, but not enough that what they were talking about. I was concerned that maybe they knew something about some kind of plot to hit New York or some place where our people were, and more than I was at the true nuclear war that was going to destroy the earth, burn the wicked. Now, you can read about those, and you really need to rehearse those. It's Isaiah 24, 1 through 6, Malachi 4, 1 through 4, and then you got your Revelation 17 and 18. It shows the time, and of course shows Rome is going to be one of them. But why should you still be here? The answer is to stop wars, to stop sickness, disease, and death. And that's what you're training for. When Yahweh created the earth and put mankind here on the earth, He gave them a job to guard and keep this way. And He says, don't go this other way or you'll perish. Well, of course, they chose to follow the gods. And if you just think about the temptation, for Adam and Eve, these two people, I mean, they had it made. They were living in luxury, and yet they were drawn, and that shows you how strong Satan's temptations and Satan's influence is in your life. When you start thinking something other than go to the place where Yahweh chooses to place His name, and there study to show yourself approved to Yahweh, and Yahweh says, I'm going to test you and prove you. I'm not going to take lip service. I'm just going to test you and prove you, and I'm going to prove you to the kingdom of heaven, to the kingdoms in heaven, so they will know that they can trust you. I'm going to prove you. I'm going to prove you right here. And then He tells you, as the great deacon brought out, He tells you, go to that place and ask questions and do what He's told. When I was writing the book to teach speech classes, I said, it's really hard to ask a question and still pretend that you know it all. Well, of course, that's the hardest thing to do. You've got to put behind you things. Don't think you can make up your own mind. If you're being tempted to do something, and you're being pulled away to do this and waste your time, you need some help. Call and ask, hey, I'm tempted to go do this thing. What do I do? And I tell them, well, you answer me. I shouldn't do it, right? Yeah. Thank you for calling. The offer of a position in this kingdom. Now, Yahshua says few are going to make it. Of course, we're considered that few, us right here, the house. We're considered that few, and we're going to grow like an oak tree to 2 billion. That's not much. 2 billion is not much when you consider that it's uncountable. Like the sands of the sea, it's uncountable the amount of people that have had this offer. They had the offer up until 70 AY. The Book of Yahweh was taken from them, put in captivity, sealed up, couldn't be read or published, couldn't be owned by an individual, had to have permission to even look at it. And if you had a menorah, they would arrest you, take your land into possession, all your own everything you owned into possession. You would be held in a prison until your trial, at which time they would judge you either guilty or innocent and make a slave out of you for life or murder you, one of the two, give you to Circe to feed to her pigs. That's where the word church came from, by the way. The evil kingdoms we see now are not eternal. They're going to end in this generation. In this generation, brethren, we're going to have nuclear war. They're not eternal. Let's go back to Genesis, the first chapter. And I hope that the people that have left will read this, because this is what you're throwing away. Yahweh created mankind. In verse 26, it says, "Then Yahweh said, I will make man in my image." Now, the King James Version says, "Let us," as if he was talking to the gods. They say, "Let us." This can't be true, and if you just look at the next verse in a King James Version, and I pointed this out years ago, I think in college, when I pointed this out to this group, and I've been teaching it ever since, but if you look at the next verse in a King James Version, it says, "And God made." The correct word that I didn't know at that time was, they removed the name Yahweh. But it plainly says there, this one being created mankind in his own image. That's the very next verse. So, see, they overlooked that when they tried to pretend that there was gods with him, helping him to create. Isaiah says there was no gods with him at his creation, neither will there be after his planned creation is finished. That's what book Isaiah was inspired to write. But he says, the true translation is, "Then Yahweh said, I will make man in my image, according to my likeness," not the God's likeness, but his likeness. "They will have rulership." Rulership. If you look at all the things that he points out there that you're going to have rulership over, and you look at Yeshua's life and see the things when they were given to him, how he actually had this, then you can see that the microorganisms are going to obey you. And that's what Yahweh uses, forming kingdoms of microorganisms in your body, trillions of kingdoms in your body that makes your eyes see, your tongue speak, your lungs breathe air in and out, your heart beat back and forth pumping blood. Each one of those has several kingdoms that work together to do that. That's the authority you're going to be given. Where? Seek the place where I choose to place my name, and there, Yeshua said, all these things will be added to you. It's pretty simple if you just put it together. In chapter 2, verse 9, he shows that he is going to test you now. I'm not going to let you go scot-free here. My own sons turned against me. My wife turned against me. They destroyed the earth. They showed their character by what they created. Their creation power was taken away from them. In fact, the earth vomited them out. That's what we're shown in the other verses. Don't do these things, he said, or the earth will vomit you out. The land will vomit you out. You're cursed from the land itself. Now we got cholera headed our way, by the way, that I told you was going to come because the dead are not being buried. They're killing them too fast. They're starving to death in other places. And they're letting them lay there and rot, what the ones that the buzzards don't eat. This is the loving, merciful, God-worshiping, Catholic, Roman Catholic, Coptic Catholic religion that is leader of the religions of the earth. This is their character that we see in front of us right now. You're going to see it, Yahweh says. I'm going to show it to you. Psalms 91 says, I'm going to show it to you. And you can see it just like we showed it to you. This is news we took off of the news media to show to you here. Show you this. These things are real. 91, Psalms 91 is taking place right now. Here, the tree of life. The tree of life is given. In chapter 3, it's cut off, 3:22. Revelations 22, verses 12 through 16 says, "Blessed are those who keep his laws. They have right to the tree of life now." That's Revelation written in 96. But not at that time they didn't. But it's possible now because our high priest made high priest. He qualified to be high priest over the house of Yahweh, that a branch would build. A branch called that came from the two witnesses. He would build this house, and Yeshua said in verse 16, "I've sent my Malach to testify to you these things in the house of Yahweh." Written in 96. See how plain that is? Written in 96, but not fulfilled till this generation, as Matthew 24:14 shows, where he plainly says that this messenger is going to take this message to all the world. That generation, what generation? The generation of the nuclear bomb, verse 29. That didn't start till 1934, the year I was born, with the knowledge increase that also started in 1934, the year I was born, the year the branch was born that built the house of Yahweh, with Yeshua as high priest. So the tree of life is there in the garden, and then the tree of evil. The tree of evil is also there. Well, here now in the very next chapter, he shows you Satan putting her propaganda out that this way of the gods is desirable. She didn't get a close look at it like you're getting. You're getting a close look at what this way of the gods bring. And if you just watch the television, the news, be careful and be prepared to flip it off, especially if you have a child watching with you, or you'll be worshiping Satan and have your child worshiping Satan along with you. Yes, they flip it out at you. Remember what Yeshua said about your lust. This is something else you've got to be in control of. And if you're not in control of, Satan will control it for you. And you'll be thinking what a desirable thing that is you're looking at when you turn the news channel on. You can't weed it out. You've got to be prepared to do it yourself and do it instantly. Surely this is making sense to you. Praise Yahweh. Well, here again now we see the evil of the gods knowing evil. You will be as gods, like gods knowing evil, or as gods knowing evil. You'll be worshiping Satan. You'll be worshiping the gods, God worship. It is called sin in verse 7. Verse 7. Now, Yeshua said in Matthew 6 and verse 33, let's just turn to it. Turn to it and read it. Maybe mark it if you haven't got it marked. Maybe you should mark it and mark it in the previous chapters where to go from there. But this is the Savior now doing the speaking. He's your high priest right now. But he's speaking through you through his branch. At the house of Yahweh, where Yahweh chose to place his name. His name is indisputable. His name, there's no argument at all as to what his name is. All of those points are covered. It's never been forgotten. It's pronounced Yahweh in English. It's pronounced Yahweh in Hebrew. It's pronounced Yahweh everywhere in the world. Chapter 6, verse 33. seek you first, that this be the first thing in your life. If it's not, Satan will pull you out. You only have a short ways to go. But if you'd find the joy, brethren, that I've found in the house of Yahweh, you wouldn't want to go anywhere else. I guarantee you. But seek you first the kingdom of Yahweh and his righteousness. Two things. And all these things that I've promised from Genesis through to here will be added to you. All of these things, all of these blessings. Boy, the blessings that's promised in Deuteronomy 28. The blessings that's promised that Adam and Eve threw away. Well, if you look back now to that tree of life again in Genesis 2, notice that tree of life, and that tree of righteousness and evil. That's in 2 verse 9. And then you can remember, surely, well, let's go over to Revelation. Revelations 22. Revelations 22. Now, this all take place at just the house of Yahweh. You can't get it anywhere else. You can't get it on your own. No way you can be individual about this. You've got to go to that place and ask what work they want you to do and get it done. Revelations 22. This is Yahshua doing the talking. Yahshua is your high priest. He qualified for it. He sits at the right hand of Yahweh right now. You're going to be at the left hand very soon yourself, if you qualify. And you can, if you will just pay attention, buckle down and start reading, studying, keeping Yahweh's laws. Don't do it on your own. Man, we have, I've written over 50 books for you. I read that myself. I couldn't believe it. Binya's sent me a cover to look at, and I was reading this, and it said he's written over 50 books. Plus all this other stuff they named there. But that was for you. I didn't write those for me. I wrote them for you. As a servant of Yahshua, as a servant of Yahweh, behold, I come quickly. I come quickly. This generation is about over. This nuclear war is about here. What is going to be left are the ones who practice righteousness. You're told that over and over, and 1 John 3 says it better than any. The only ones that's going to be left. All the rest of them, neither root nor branch, as Malachi 4 said. And behold, I come quickly, my reward is with me, my reward for you, what he's promised you. All these things, he said. Seek first the kingdom of Yahweh, the house of Yahweh, where I choose to place my name and his righteousness. Seek those things first. And all of these things, this reward right here, includes all of those things that Yahweh has promised. My reward is with me to give to every person according as his work will be, his position in the kingdom of Yahweh. I'm the first, I'm the last. I'm the beginning and the end. Yeshua is the first to be begotten of Yahweh. He's the first to be begotten of the only begetting Father. Yahweh, he's the creator of all. So he owns all. He's the heavenly Father. You can't get any higher than that. Right? You can't get any higher than the Father. That's it. So here comes Satan saying, I'm going to put my throne up here. She made a god out of herself. She made a god out of her sons. Well, we can take over the Father's throne. We got power, man. We can create dinosaurs that'll eat him up. All of these things were going on into her mind. And the gods, and they saw the power they had where they could organize and create from the microorganisms And they created a bloody cesspool here on the earth that had to have a flood to kill it out and clean it up. Verse 14, blessed are those that keep his laws. Keep his laws. The very first one, remember, the deacon brought it out this morning. The very first one, go to the place where I choose to place my name. That's the start of your salvation. That's the start of your learning. You can't learn this anywhere else. It's not taught anywhere else. It's not taught at Six Flags. Why would you go to Six Flags? It's not taught at Garden World or Whirlpool World or Poop swimming pools. It's not taught there at all. All you see there is evil, more evil. They eat, they drink, they rise up to play, they go to the doctor and die. The hospitals and die. Blessed are those who keep his laws, that they may have right to this tree of life. You don't have right to the tree of life unless you keep his laws. Are you getting that? The first law, go to the house. The second law, go to the priests, the Levites, the judges, that I'll put in charge there at my house. Can you imagine when Yahshua, you remember when his parents, they went to the feast at Jerusalem. That was what was commanded. They went there. They took their son, a 12-year-old boy, fully trained. That boy was fully trained. He was only 12. After the feast was over and they left Jerusalem, 3 days later, 3 days of travel, which would be a few hours walking, the travel was slow, they went back to Jerusalem hunting that 12-year-old boy. Now get this story. This is a wonderful lesson here. They found him where? With the priest. What was he doing? What was he doing with the priest? This boy's been raised up all of his life to serve Yahweh. He went to the place where Yahweh chose to place his name, and Yeshua went to the priest and asked them questions. He was asking them questions. That's what you're supposed to do. Everyone who wants salvation in this time period, you've got to perform this law just like Yeshua did. He set you an example that you've got to follow in his steps. He didn't go there and argue with the priest. There's nothing said about any argument. And when the mother said something to him, he said, I've got to be about my Father's business. I've got to. 12 years old. How many years has that set in his mind already? Before he was 12? I'd say before he was born. His mother was teaching him in her womb, reading him the laws. It wasn't forbidden at that time. You know, it only became forbidden after 70 AY. And then a death penalty was passed against reading this to your children. Satan said, no, it's more desirable to let your children grow up idiots without knowing righteousness. Put that thing away and don't let anyone see it, touch it, or read it. Yes, it was hidden in the Vatican. If you don't believe me, look up Titus, General Titus. Vespasian before him, who killed millions of people that were keeping Sabbath, keeping the feast days, had a menorah. Oh yes, it went on long before Titus. They used the Roman army to collect tribute and lives. This is an evil organization. And they're saying now, no nuclear war. We don't want this nuclear war to hit our place. And they're prophesied, and they know it because we brought it out, and we've told them you're going to be burned. If you don't repent and let my people go, you're going to burn. Well, they're not going to let our people go. So once they make this decision to go ahead and do without Yahweh, they have made the decision to let our people go because they're not going to live through it. And Yahweh shows that. I believe the prophecy. This man here was writing this in 96. And he told the details of the life of Yahshua. Blessed are those who keep his laws. This is Yahshua doing the talking. This message was given to him by Yahweh, the same message that was given to Adam and Eve. Blessed are those who keep his laws, that they may have right now to this tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. When will this take place? It's taking place right now. Your names are being listed. You're being proven. And your name is on the books right now. Enter in through the gates into the city. For outside are sodomites. Outside are the sodomites, those who rape children, those who have any, that's God worship. Yes, it's a law forbidding it. Outside, you're not going to get into the kingdom, and death is coming. Outside are sodomites, sorcerers, that's pharmaceuticals now. Look it up for yourself if you don't believe me and study it. Look at Strong, start with Strong. But there's books on this. Pharmaceuticals. You know how many people right now are dying from overdoses on prescription drugs? It kills. It's a murder. No murderer is going to make it into Yahweh's kingdom. No murderer has eternal life abiding in him. Outside are sodomites and sorcerers, which include druggists, whoremongers. These are wives that lust after other men. These are men that lust after other men's wives or daughters. You can't lust after somebody unless that person is given to you. That's the only time you have right to anything like that. Otherwise, you're worshiping Satan and the evil gods. This is God worship when you do this. And Yahshua said, if it's in your heart, you've done it. You're doing it. The thing to do is get it out of your heart, put it with this right here, this starved-to-death woman with the starved-to-death baby, and imagine the millions that are stacking up and the cholera coming at you because of this. Someone handed me an article this morning that said 1 out of every 2 men now have an STD. I said they're lying about that too. Everyone in the world has an STD today. There's no one free of STDs. You can get it everywhere now. Come out from among them and be ye separate. Touch not the unclean. And I will receive you, and you'll be my sons and daughters. And I will give you all of these things. The rest of it is going to disappear. Outside are these dogs and sorcerers, whoremongers, murderers, worshipers of gods. That's what it is. God worship. And everyone who professes to love like the Pope does. Of course, that letter was, I don't know if he even knows what the word love means. I know he doesn't know what the word mercy means, that written in the scripture. But practice is breaking the law. I, Yahshua, have sent my Malach to testify to you these things, and he's testifying to you these things right now in the congregations of the House of Yahweh. We have a lot of congregations now that are meeting in different places, and they're letting it be known. In fact, the Facebook is growing rather rapidly now by volume and by the ones that's tuning into it, reading it, or whatever it is they're doing. But that's growing. Our live program is getting a great deal of attention, and they're writing. One person came here this week. Sometimes it takes a while. He'd been listening to me for 18 years, he said. He finally got to eat his first meal in the House of Yahweh yesterday. Praise Yahweh. The things that the world is missing, you know, and of course, these people, they know they're dying. Out there in the world, they know they're dying. They make movies to try to cheer these people up and say, you know, go ahead and live life. So they go ahead and commit more sin. You know, live life to the fullest. So they go out and they commit more sin than they were. And they don't try to teach them to stop doing this and be healed like the House of Yahweh does. They don't teach the world to stop war. You know, it's like Satan saying, no nuclear bomb, no nuclear wars. Us don't have a nuclear war. Let's kill all of these people with conventional weapons, but no nuclear war. You know, that really makes a lot of sense, don't it? And this is coming from their leader. This is the leader of all the religions of the earth. And this is the mentality that we're seeing leading these people. Well, Satan has got them so confused, they're all like blind men groping for a doorknob. Now that's how Yahweh describes them. They have no answers. They're saying, find us a peaceful solution. Well, they don't know where to look. And when it's shown to them, yeah, that would work, but how do you put something like this in action overnight? You know, we want something that'll work tonight. We want to stop this war going on right now because we're losing it. We're losing it. It's gaining ground against us. We didn't bring you a portion, but it's like one drop of rain with a heavy shower. We brought you one drop of this news as is taking place right now, where the enemy is actually gaining ground. It's being paid for by the major nations, but it's gaining ground. And it's also taking place here in the United States, according to our President, Donald Trump. It's taking place and it's being kept secret. They're trying to control it because they don't want to get the people, I guess, alarmed or don't want them to go join them, which that might be the case. You never know who's the enemy and who's the friend in today's allies. Everybody is out for himself. There is no love for the other person. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the services over to the next speaker. I love you!